beleza? Marlos Greenlock mais uma vez aqui com The Base, que é essa série maravilhosa criada pelo Chris McFeely. E o personagem que vamos falar hoje é chegado numa fumaça. Mas não essa fumaça que você está pensando aí do outro lado da tela. Essa fumaça ele utilizava para distrair os inimigos em combate. Hoje nós vamos falar sobre o SMOKESCREEN, um personagem da G1 que eu particularmente não tenho muita lembrança dele, apesar de ser praticamente um Matusalém. Mas eu tenho lembranças de personagens mais novos que utilizaram esse nome. Eu tenho esse aqui de Armada, por exemplo, que é um personagem muito bacana, tá? E em Armada ele acaba sendo ferido e é reformatado nessa outra forma aqui. E aí passa a se chamar Host. E em Armada também existe um minicom que foi feito um repaint nele para que ele ficasse com as cores do personagem. Mas de todos esses aí, o que eu mais gosto é esse aqui, que faz parte da linha Alternator e se transforma num Subaru Imprensa, WRX, que disputou o Campeonato Mundial de Rally. Eu, como grande fã de automobilismo, não tinha como não ter esse personagem na minha coleção. É um personagem incrível e você olhando a forma alternativa dele, você não fala que é um Transformer, porque tem todo o interior totalmente detalhado, abre as portas, abre o porta-mala. Então é um personagem muito bacana e quem puder vale a pena ter. Então, pessoal, é isso que a gente vai falar hoje. Então vamos naqueles anúnciozinhos no canal. Então se você não está inscrito, por favor se inscreva. Verifique aí se você continua inscrito, porque volta e meia o YouTube dá aquela cortada básica em alguns inscritos nossos. Acione o sininho para você receber nossas notificações. Curta, compartilhe com seus amigos. E é isso, galera. Até o próximo The Basic. Um abraço.
The comments section's been asking for this episode for a long time, and I figured I couldn't keep you waiting any longer. This week it's time for a look at the basics on the many Autobots who have shared the name SMOKESCREEN. The original SMOKESCREEN toy was first released in 1983 as part of the Japanese toy line Diaclone, and was then imported by Hasbro to become part of the second year of the Transformers toy line in 1985. The figure was one of 3 Diaclone toys that transformed into Datsun 280ZX Turbo sports cars. The other 2 were released by Hasbro in 1984 as Bluestreak and Prowl. SMOKESCREEN's red, blue and white colours were based on the unique real-life electromotive engineering Datsun driven in racing championships by Don Devendorf. Marvel Comics writer Bob Budiansky crafted a profile for SMOKESCREEN that characterized him as the Autobots' diversionary tactician, a devious and charming bot who had an ulterior motive in everything he did, whether he was leading Decepticons astray on the battlefield, or using friendly conversation as a cover to gather intel on the other Autobots for Optimus Prime. In vehicle mode, SMOKESCREEN could generate a literal smokescreen from his tailpipe, which he used to blind and disorient his enemies. He used this ability many times in the Transformers animated series, after he joined the cast of the show midway through its 2nd season, though no explanation was ever offered for where he had come from. In his showcase episode, The Gambler, SMOKESCREEN was the only Autobot to avoid being abducted and brainwashed by the alien gambler Bosch, and attempted to buy his friend's freedom by using his skills of diversion and misdirection to help Bosch cheat his way to a big win in an alien casino. Bosch put the brainwashed Autobots up as collateral, but unfortunately, Lady Luck didn't smile on SMOKESCREEN, and he wound up having to join forces with the Autobot bounty hunter DevCon to rescue his friends. In the Marvel comic book, meanwhile, SMOKESCREEN was one of several Autobots who, millions of years ago, allowed Optimus Prime to copy their minds onto storage crystals, to take with him when he left Cybertron in case he needed reinforcements. In the present day, when this need arose, new bodies were constructed, and SMOKESCREEN and the other Autobots' minds were implanted into them. Sadly, Smokescreen never did much of anything in the American comic, but he got a little more time in the spotlight in stories produced exclusively for the United Kingdom's version of the series, in which he led a handful of Autobot missions, and memorably worked alongside Inferno to alert the Autobots to the resurrection of the Dark God, Unicron. Now, Smokescreen's toy was only on sale for 1 year, and with its discontinuation in 1986, he was quietly phased out of both the comic and the cartoon. Storyboards for The Transformers the movie depicted him as one of the many Autobots who fell during the Battle of Autobot City, but the finished film replaced his body with Wheeljack. No further toys of Smokescreen were released in the original series, but in 1994, in order to maintain their trademark on his name, Hasbro reused the name on a toy of a new, very different character, unconnected to the original, a Decepticon jet fighter who came packaged with the huge stealth bomber Dreadwing. This Smokescreen had no profile or personality, and made only a brief appearance in Marvel's Generation 2 comic. But over the years, Japanese media would flesh him out, depicting him as a mysterious manipulator who tricked the pacifist Dreadwing into working with him to wipe out both the Autobots and the Decepticons. New toys of the pair were released in 2010 as exclusives at the Tokyo Toy Show, and in 2019 they appeared in the Transformers Legends manga, upgraded into these new forms by Unicron. In a surprise move, the manga retroactively declared that this Smokescreen was actually the same character as the Autobot original, explaining that he had temporarily been turned to evil after his mind was fractured into multiple personalities by an experimental system designed to let him control multiple bodies at once. The random reuse of Smokescreen's name would continue in 2002's Transformers Armada, which debuted another new Smokescreen, this one a strong but slow Autobot Crane, who liked using direct, full-force attacks rather than fancy fighting styles to make sure that every move counted. As seen in the Armada cartoon, this Smokescreen followed Optimus Prime's unit when they left Cybertron for Earth through a warp gate, but was separated from them in transit and materialized beneath a human city, where he was stuck until his comrades found him. Smokescreen later became the guardian of the Minicon weapon, the Skyboom Shield, and used his crane arm to deploy the shield to whoever needed it in battle. He was gravely wounded during a Decepticon attack on the Autobot base, but medic Red Alert was able to save his life, rebuilding his body into a new form. Now equipped with a powerful excavator alternate mode, Smokescreen took on the new name, Hoist. Now, while Armada's Smokescreen had no relation to the original, the series did pay homage to the classic character by colouring the Minicon Prowl in his red and blue deco. Also, it was planned for the Armada Hotshot toy to be recoloured in Smokescreen colours for 2003's Transformers Universe toyline, but this figure wound up being cancelled. But after these false starts, the name Smokescreen would finally be brought home in 2006 by Transformers Cybertron. Initially, this series planned to reuse the name at random again, this time for a gruff Autobot monster hunter. But this bot wound up being called Crosswise instead. Early broadcasts of the Cybertron cartoon used the Smokescreen name, but it was later redubbed to remove it.
Smokescreen! I'm not called the Monster Hunter for nothing. Crosswise! I'm not called the Monster Hunter for nothing.
Late in the Cybertron toyline though, Crosswise's toy was recolored to create a true Cybertron version of Smokescreen, which brought the character back to his roots as a red, blue and white Autobot sports car who was described as a prankster who used his talent for trickery to confuse and mislead the Decepticons. This return to the classic depiction of the character continued into the live-action movie universe, when a movie version of Smokescreen with the colours and personality of the original was introduced in the first film's tie-in toy line in 2008. This Smokescreen appeared in various tie-in comic books, and more figures of him were released in the 2009 sequel toy line, Revenge of the Fallen. The most recent and most significant new incarnation of Smokescreen was introduced in 2012 in Transformers Prime. Though he sported a variation of the classic colour scheme, in terms of personality, this version of Smokescreen was again a rather different character. A reckless young hotshot whose uneventful job back on Cybertron as bodyguard to the Autobot sage Alpha Trion had left him all too eager for his first taste of real action. Early plans for the Prime cartoon would have seen Smokescreen appear in the first season and been killed by the Decepticons, but this ill-fated role ultimately went to Cliffjumper. Instead, Smokescreen joined the show late in its second season, linking up with Optimus Prime's unit on Earth after escaping a Decepticon prison ship. Armed with his signature weapon, the Phase Shifter, which granted him the power of intangibility, Smokescreen's desire to be a hero saw him frequently rush in without thinking, which caused his comrades a lot of frustration, and even led to him being captured by the Decepticons, after it was discovered that Alpha Trion had hidden a powerful Cybertronian relic inside his body. But he eventually turned a corner after he saved Optimus Prime's life following a catastrophic Decepticon attack on the Autobot base. During this affair, when it seemed like Prime wouldn't survive his injuries, out of necessity, he almost passed the matrix of leadership to Smokescreen, which made the youngster realize he wasn't as eager as he thought for all the responsibilities that went with a life of heroism, and helped temper his hot-headedness with some much-needed patience. In and amongst all these alternate versions, the original Smokescreen hasn't been forgotten. His presence in Transformers media in the 21st century has been limited to only minor roles in comic books, mobile games and the like, but he grabbed plenty of headlines in 2003 when he was the first figure released in the Transformers Alternators toy line, the first major revival of classic Generation 1 characters with modern alternate modes, in Smokescreen's case, a Subaru Impreza. And in the years that have followed, every time a new Prowl or Bluestreak toy gets released, it's common for it to be recolored to create a new Smokescreen as well, meaning that he's appeared in Transformers toy lines pretty frequently over the last decade. At the moment, there's no sign of him returning to our TV screens just yet. But where Smokescreen's concerned, looks are always deceiving, and nothing can be predicted. And those are the basics on Smokescreen. Tell me about your favourite incarnation in the comments. As always, if you've enjoyed this look at Transformers history and lore, like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified about new episodes, or get early access to them through Patreon.